The engines had gone quiet. The checkered flag was still waving in the Texas wind, fluttering above a sea of noise and disbelief. Something had just happened at the Circuit of the Americas, something that no one in 77 years of this sport had ever witnessed. And not everyone was celebrating. A man stood near the pit wall, arms crossed, jaw tight. A few garages down, another driver yanked off his helmet and stared at the sky. In the broadcast booth, voices cracked, trying to find the right words. Because what do you say when history doesn't look the way you expected it to? Tyler Reddick had just won his third consecutive race to open the 2026 NASCAR Cup Series season. Daytona, Atlanta, and now COTA, becoming the first driver in the sport's entire 77-year history to achieve that feat. And Michael Jordan, standing on pit road in wraparound sunglasses with a grin that could light up an arena, threw his arms around anyone in reach. It was a dynasty moment. But for some in the garage, it felt like something else entirely. If you've ever felt like the whole world is watching someone rise and wondered whether it's brilliance or something more, then stay with us. This channel exists for moments exactly like this one. Hit that subscribe button, because what we're about to unpack goes far deeper than a trophy. To understand why this win streak hit the garage like a grenade, you have to go back to a war that nearly tore NASCAR apart before a single lap of the 2026 season was ever run. In October 2024, Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin, the co-owners of 23XI Racing, did something almost no one in the sport had ever dared to do. They sued NASCAR. Not quietly, not through back channels. They filed a federal antitrust lawsuit in the Western District of North Carolina, accusing NASCAR of monopolistic control over stock car racing, of locking teams into suffocating charter agreements that left owners barely breaking even while the sanctioning body posted hundreds of millions in annual income. Denny Hamlin testified under oath that running a Cup Series team required generating $45 million in sponsorship revenue just to turn a minor profit. Jordan, who had joined the sport in 2021 out of genuine love for racing, made clear, if he had to fight this to the end for the betterment of the sport, he would. The 2025 season played out entirely in the shadow of that lawsuit. 23XI raced without official charters for part of the year, stripped of guaranteed entry and revenue security. Tyler Reddick, their star driver in the No. 45 Toyota Camry, went the entire 2025 season without a single win. A man who had claimed the 2024 regular season championship couldn't find victory lane for 38 consecutive races. His team was distracted, resource-stretched, fighting a legal war in courtrooms while trying to compete at 200 miles per hour. And then, on December 11, 2025, 9 days into the federal trial, both sides settled. 23XI Racing received their charters back. Permanent ones. Evergreen charters. The financial terms were sealed. But the message was clear: Michael Jordan had won. And now his team was heading into the 2026 season with something far more dangerous than a favorable legal ruling. They had a point to prove. Drop a comment below. Did you follow the 23XI lawsuit last year? Do you think fighting NASCAR in court changed the culture inside that garage? Because what happened next suggests it absolutely did. February 15, 2026. The Daytona 500. The sport's biggest stage. Tyler Reddick, car repaired mid-race after getting caught in an early wreck, somehow clawed his way back through the field in the final laps and crossed the line first. 23 She's first ever Daytona 500 victory. Michael Jordan cradled that trophy like it was made of gold and history, because it was both. 1 week later, at Echo Park Speedway in Atlanta, Reddick did it again. His Camry took visible fender damage during the race, but he absorbed it, drove around it, and led the most laps en route to his second win of the still-infant season. Jordan stood in the pit box, vibrating with something between joy and vindication. The whole operation, Reddick in the 45, Bubba Wallace in the 23, Riley Herbst in the 35, was clicking in a way no one outside the organization had anticipated. By the time the Cup Series arrived in Austin, Texas for the Circuit of the Americas road race on March 1st, the whispers had already started in the garage. 2 wins from 2 races. Different track types, super speedway, intermediate oval. And Reddick was starting from pole at COTA, a track where he'd won before in 2023. The math was unsettling to some. Other competitors and their crews, voices careful, words measured, began raising questions about preparation advantages, resources, and the kinds of gains that don't always show up in a post-race teardown. Not cheating in the traditional sense, but in a sport where thousandths of a second determine outcomes. The line between legal innovation and unfair advantage has never been perfectly drawn. Here's the real question that divided the NASCAR community this week, and we want to know where you stand. Is this domination a product of elite preparation, or does the timing of the 23-11 legal victory and their sudden on-track explosion feel too convenient to ignore? Comment your honest take below. The Circuit of the Americas sat baking in 109-degree track temperatures. This is a Formula One circuit, a technical maze of elevation changes, hairpins, and sweeping S's that punishes even the smallest error. And from the moment the green flag dropped, Tyler Reddick looked like he'd been born on this ribbon of asphalt. He led 58 of the race's 95 laps. Not just led, dominated. Ryan Blaney came for him in the final stage, pulling alongside through turn 6A, trying to find a way past. Reddick shut the door. Then Shane van Gisbergen, the New Zealand road course prodigy, driving the No. 97 Trackhouse Chevrolet, restarted third, sliced past Blaney, and locked in directly behind Reddick for the final 16-lap run. For 8 laps, Van Gisbergen was on his bumper. Literally millimeters of air between them through the S's, up the hill toward turn 1, back down through the technical sections. SVG is the best road course driver in the world on his day, and Reddick simply would not yield. He pulled away, 3.944 seconds at the line. A margin that looks gentle but felt like a canyon given the battle that had preceded it. Post-race inspection concluded without issues. The number 45 was clean. Technically, legally, officially, no violations found. But that's where the story got complicated. Other competitors and their crews began raising questions about preparation advantages and the kinds of gains that don't always show up in a teardown. Not cheating in the traditional sense, but in a sport where thousandths of a second determine outcomes. The line between legal innovation and unfair advantage has never been cleanly drawn. The garage talked. Social media burned. And the questions attached themselves to the celebration like smoke that won't clear. Jordan walked to Reddick's car as the team celebrated. 6-time NBA champion. 2-time three-peat architect. He knew something about making history look inevitable. He told the media that winning 3 in a row was the hardest one, because his driver had to hold his nerve under the entire weight of it all. Reddick said simply, "I was just trying to minimize mistakes. Shane is so good out here. Just to be able to outlast him and hold on for the win is just incredible." Incredible. Or inevitable, depending on which side of the garage wall you were standing. This is the moment, right here, where we want you to know, if this story matters to you, you are not alone in watching it unfold. Let's sit with what this actually means. Not just for Tyler Reddick, but for American sport. Reddick now holds a 70-point lead over teammate Bubba Wallace in the championship standings. Chase Elliott sits 72 points back in third. The season has barely begun. 33 races remain, and the number 45 Toyota is already operating on a level of momentum that championships are built from. Denny Hamlin himself said he would not see this again in his lifetime. Someone winning the first 3 races of a Cup Series season. The numbers agreed. It had never been done in 77 years. But here's the context that makes this story bigger than a win streak. 23-11 Racing was the team that took on the establishment. Michael Jordan, a man who built his entire legacy on refusing to accept limitations placed on him by others, applied that same competitive philosophy to the business of NASCAR. He went to federal court. He put his name and his money and his reputation on the line. And then, 6 weeks after winning that legal battle, his driver made NASCAR history. The questions won't disappear. The garage will keep watching. Post-race inspections will be scrutinized with extra attention every single week that Reddick contends for a win. That is the reality of dominance in a sport where everyone is looking for an edge and everyone suspects someone else found it first. But consider this, a kid from Corning, California, who grew up racing karts at age 4, who drove to back-to-back Xfinity championships, who spent 38 races without a win and never publicly cracked. That driver is now the most talked-about name in American motorsport. And the man who bet on him when no one else was willing to go to war for a fair deal is standing in a pit lane in Austin, Texas, living out his second three-peat. Whether you call this a scandal or a dynasty, whether you are in the camp that sees a team gaming the system or a team that finally got what they deserved, you are watching one of the most compelling stories in the history of this sport unfold in real time. And it is far from over. Phoenix is next, then the rest of the season. The question is not whether this team will be challenged. The question is whether anyone can stop them. We cover every angle of NASCAR that the mainstream doesn't touch. The politics, the rivalries, the stories behind the standings. If that is the kind of coverage you want, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because this story has many chapters left.